it's hard to say this maybe was a good thing, because now the club's bigger and stronger and better than it has ever been. It's fan-owned, got really good backers in the club from the outside, new stadium basically, new stand, the club's just going strength to strength. So maybe if that didn't happen, would the club be here where it is now? I don't know. Just always remember the scenes coming back in the bus after the game, going through Gorgie, all the fans were there, obviously having the after party the next morning, going up into town and having the bus parade along Princess Street, which is obviously the biggest in front of the castle. The Gorgie with hundreds of thousands of fans, you know that, I think. Unless there's a manager somewhere, I've never realised that moment ever again. No one's ever confirmed this to me, but I'm quite switched on. Obviously the reason was because they wanted to, looking forward a year or two, they wanted to sell me and bring some money in, and obviously that did happen.
So the exclusive there to some extent in terms of you being captain?
Yeah, no one told me that, but actually I think it was a good move because it worked, and I really enjoyed it. And to go in, especially in Tynecastle, for 18,000 fans walking out at the start of the game, there's no better feeling.
I want to start, Christophe, by exploring the summer and exploring the Euros. What are your thoughts on Scotland and their performance in Germany? Yeah,
it was obviously very disappointing. I think everyone, like we do, we went in there with really high hopes because we had a strong qualifying campaign. We were very strong. We've got good players. We've got good individual players. A lot of players now who are playing at a high level. So yeah, it was bitterly disappointing. Obviously, the first game, that kind of game can happen. It's Germany, host nation. They're a massive nation with top players, and in the second game, great. But I think it was just a matter of that last minute goal on a transition that really sucker punched us, and again, so close, but yet so far.
Do you think that's down to maybe mentality, technically or tactically, the way that the team set up? I'm just interested on the whole process there, because obviously it's a new experience for Scotland more recently. I'm just interested in that in terms of your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. Steve Clarke's done a remarkable job, and you can't fault him. And unfortunately, when you're in that position, no matter what level, when you don't get results, you're going to be questioned. But I think football can be short-minded at times, and what a great job he'd done prior to that. And but going into the Euros again, we were high hopes, but we just didn't get over the line. If we had, I know they mentioned it, that penalty probably should have been a penalty. If we'd scored that, we would have been through to the next round, no doubt, and then it would be a different mind frame from the players' point of view, the fans' point of view, and the media's point of view. But football is that kind of sport. It's just on fine margins, and on that day, in that moment, those margins went against us.
Well, obviously going to your career in a moment, but just on that, around maybe the development of the Scottish national team, and even maybe the infrastructure put in place. What are your thoughts on young players coming through the Scottish system and playing in the Premier League as well as across Europe? Do you feel like it's positive at the moment? Do you feel like there's an improvement there since obviously you played?
Yeah, there's a lot of clubs now investing in their youth systems and their academy. However, with Brexit, I think a lot of the English clubs are coming in, taking the young prospects, 16, 17-year-olds, and taking them down south, which was always going to happen. However, if Brexit was in there, then maybe that would have been 2 or 3 years down the line. There is some talent who will stay up here and stay at the clubs, and probably there's 2 pathways you can go. You can go down England to go through really great academies, great facilities, and hopefully make that step up. In the Premier League, it's probably very, very small percentage of those players will make it to the first team. However, that doesn't mean there's not a pathway to the Football League. Or you can stay in Scotland and play first team football in the Premier League, maybe the Championship, get exposure, playing against in competitions or live on television, and then go that route. And to be honest, I'll probably say the second. Statistically, I might be wrong here, but for example, my career, I stayed at the club. Not saying I had any interest in that, but I played, 100 odd games, and I moved down south. I think people forget, they see the bright lights of England, which is great, and I understand it. And if my children had that opportunity, it'd be a hard one not to turn down. But playing games is one of the biggest parts of your development as a footballer. So those experiences, moments in games, experiencing situations in games that training can't. Yes, training's there for the tactical side of things and the technical, but that experience, nothing beats out playing 90 minutes in a game, and Scotland's a great platform for that.
Just a quick one to let you know that over 90% of those that watch this channel do not subscribe. So if you haven't already, please click the subscribe button down below. The bigger the channel, the bigger the guests, and more importantly, it's absolutely free. Enjoy the episode.
Let me bring you back to the beginning of your journey then, and kind of just picking up on some of the things that you've just noted there in terms of obviously your journey from Scotland to England. So if we begin at the very early stages, how did football become a passion for you, and how did your career start in Edinburgh and the development there at Hearts?
Originally, I was quite a late developer. I never played boys' club football, as we call it up here, until probably under 12s. I basically played primary school football, secondary school football, joined a boys' club, and then it was literally on the last year that you had before you can basically get picked up at academy football. So I got picked up at Hearts at under maybe 15s, and I went to under 16s for one season. And that season is basically you either get offered a contract, a youth development contract, or apprenticeship, or you don't. And I think I was the only one in that squad who got offered a deal. There's other players who've been there through the system since Hearts, since maybe under 10s. But I was the only one who was fortunate enough to get that. So to me, I developed late. I never got scouted until I was later. And ultimately, I think my old coach told me that when Hearts came to watch one of our games with Boys Club, they all weren't actually coming to watch me, come to watch another player, but the coach actually said, you should have a look at Christophe. And I was a slow developer. And, I had the opportunity, and I went and worked hard. I obviously gave my all, and I had some ability as a defender, as a footballer, and I had the opportunity to go a 2-year apprenticeship at Hearts.
What do you think that was, Christophe, in terms of your late development? And it's interesting because some of the previous guests that I've spoke to, they kind of mentioned that similar pathway in a sense, but they mentioned they were playing other sports and street football and all those different things that made them have the mentality to become a professional footballer. Was that similar to you? Were you doing other activities at that adolescent age that enabled you to have the transferable skills and to becoming a defender?
I was basically just at your school. What sports you done at your school was rugby. I can't remember what else we'd done. We'd have done basketball, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I played all those kind of games, but football was obviously my number one sport. I used to go and spend a lot of my weekends at my uncle and auntie's house on the farm, and they had a field and goalposts, and there were local kids around, and we used to go and kick the ball about all the time. And then obviously when I was younger, primary school, my mum and dad would take me to the games early in the morning at 9 o'clock in the morning. Then moved into secondary, played for the secondary school team, played for my local boys club, then got picked up by Hearts. And I think it's quite common. Don't get me wrong, sometimes the best player on the pitch is the one from a young age who goes all the way. But usually it's the people who are in third spot, a bronze medal, who that determination to keep on going and fighting and work their way to the top. And I would categorise himself as that person.
Who was maybe your biggest influence on your career then? So you mentioned that opportunity and that element of the scout coming to watch you and getting the opportunity to have a scholarship and kind of prove yourself at a young age to try and make a first team appearance. Is there any best advice given to you, or is there anyone that really influenced you during that period of time during your...
I would say on football terms it would be one of my first and second kind of coach, Darren Murray, who I still keep in contact now, who's my 16s coach. I learned a lot of him. Then I moved up to the full-time 18s. That was John McGlynn, who I still keep in touch with now. He's at Falkirk in the Championship. They actually just went last season. They got promoted from League One undefeated the whole season. I think maybe the only team in the UK. I used to go and help there. When I just finished my career at Hearts, my last club was Wraith Rovers in the Championship when I was 37, 38. And John was the manager, took me there for a year. And those kind of guys who are the ones who I most regularly keep in touch with and would have had the most biggest impact on my football career, and especially from an early age. Just the demands, the morals, the standards you need to reach to get to the top.
Did you grow up a Hearts fan?
Yep. Yeah, I was based in Edinburgh, and I've been to games before. I used to generally watch football, most teams, and I wouldn't say I was like a diehard fan. I've never have been, but that was my team. I just like all types of football. I like watching football in general, no matter who's playing, and just like to see good, entertaining football.
What was that like for you in terms of your debut then? So you mentioned kind of your emotional link to some extent with Hearts, because obviously it's your club and you've a team that you've watched growing up. What was that like playing for actual Hearts on your debut? Did you feel that sense of pressure? And obviously being in the area, everyone knows you as the local lad and trying to prove a point and trying to get an opportunity to make it. What was that like, performing on your debut?
Yeah, it was. I remember it quite. It was Kilmarnock away. I think I got told in the morning of the game that the other defender, Stephen Presley, I think he was ill that day. He was the captain. It's quite funny. I think my first 3 or 4 games for Hearts were always against Kilmarnock for some reason. I only played the first couple of seasons. I maybe played a handful of games each season, and it seemed to always be Kilmarnock. But yeah, I would have been nervous. I would have been anxious. Like normal. Even I would have felt the same when I was coming to the end of my career, 6, 7. I always had that in me, and I think that was what got the best out of me. You go into the games, you got that edge, you got that mentality that you can't make a mistake. You're going to win all your headers, and it was no different when I was an 18-year-old basically. And you just want to go out and do well, and make sure that you the occasion is not too much for you.
Did you feel like maybe you had good people around you with the likes of Stephen Presley? He went on. I think he went on to Celtic and then became the manager of Hearts. So in terms of leadership, good people around you there. I think Craig Gordon was with you at the time. Mm. Did you feel like that helped you embed you into the team?
Yeah, it was a really experienced squad, a squad full of men. There were wise heads, and it's a little bit different from the squads now in general. And most teams are a bit younger. At that time, those were experienced pros. When you were training, if you weren't up to the standard, if you misplaced a pass, but you done it 2 or 3 times, in no words they tell you. So going onto that pitch, what levels of performance you needed to perform at, and obviously the manager, Craig Levein, he was the same. Being an ex-defender himself, even more critical of your performances and your attributes, and that was, it was a really enjoyable moment for me. And again, you just want to go. I think we drew the game 1-1. You just go into the game wanting to impress and know that you get that the manager first and foremost. And I said to most players now, youngsters, can the manager trust you when you go into that first team environment? And I think he obviously did, and I'm not looking back really.
Did you feel like maybe those kind of skills in terms of, you mentioned with Craig Levein and even other players that have gone into management, have maybe been used within your coaching at the moment in terms of those transferable skills around leadership and giving autonomy to players, etc.?
Yeah, I think that the game's changed obviously, and the environment, the culture of everyone, the kids growing up have changed. It's a different way of living, but I think there's still a place for putting demands on you, as players and as individuals, to set the standards, and knowing that if you're not meeting those standards on a regular basis, then it's kind of, you might lose your place in the team. It's just expectations. The manager knows what level you can do it, and again, it's about player management, people management, knowing how to get the best out of certain individuals. Myself, I was probably one of those persons who got a bollocking every now and then. If I was a bit slack, just reset me, reground me. Not that I was slack that very often, and throughout my career I would say, yes, I had my moments, but sometimes you just need to be brought down a peg or two. Not that I got carried away, but just know that that's not your best version of yourself. You need to raise it, and I always seem to come back bigger and stronger.
You said there's a difference between maybe your time at Hearts to now. What do you mean by that? What are the differences there?
I think when I was coming through, so obviously I joined the 18s, and there was a reserve team as well. I think the players coming through, making that step up, are a lot younger now. Whereas what my mind serves me right is those people in the reserve were like 21, 22, 23-year-olds. Now reserve teams or B teams are like 17, 18, 19-year-olds at the maximum. So I think it's a lot younger players coming through, but also it's a lot harder to make that step up. The difference from under-18s football from B-team football to first-team football is night and day, and that's a big step. And I think it's more, I don't know if it's down to finances or just a generation, but I've got my feeling is that at the moment in time that step up, it was more when I was coming through. It was your training reserves are experienced, not experienced, but older, wiser heads. Sometimes when you look at the kids coming through it, and it's just younger, and that's maybe just the culture or a club's not just Hearts, but in general, the pathway they go with the players now, and there'll be one or two will pop up and down, but really it's so difficult to make sure you make yourself a regular, especially with what's at stake as well.
So you were given the captain's armband. I think you were one of the youngest captains in the Scottish League at that time. I don't know if it's still remains a record, but why do you think maybe at such a young age we're given responsibilities around leadership? We mentioned obviously previously around the people that you work with and the trust with the managers, etc. How was that for you? Embedding yourself obviously into the team, and then all of a sudden you become a leader, but you're still quite youthful in your development. I'm just interested in how you cope with that from a mental perspective.
Yeah, it was a shock. Obviously a great privilege, and I really relished it. To be honest, we had the Romanov was a Lithuanian owner at the time, and I'll put my money in this. I'm pretty sure, and it's a good move because other clubs will do it. It was still they wanted to sell me in a year's time or two years' time, and obviously me being a captain for a club at a young age, it's going to bring turn some heads, and obviously I did move on a couple of years later. So I think that was the reason behind it. Even though I could handle it, and obviously I had those leadership qualities, I've got a good head on me, always been sensible, always been driven. So I could have been that no matter what, but I think they had a plan, was to, no one's ever confirmed this to me, but I'm quite switched on it. Obviously the reason was because they wanted to, looking forward, be a year or two, they wanted to sell me and bring some money in, and obviously that did happen.
So the exclusive there to some extent in terms of you being captain.
Yeah, but there's no one told me that, but I think it was a good move because it worked, and I really enjoyed it. And to represent your home team, the city that you're born and bred in, the team that you supported, and to go in, especially in Tynecastle in front of 18,000 fans, walking out at the start of the game, there's no better feeling.
You mentioned the Lithuanian owners. What are your thoughts on the whole process there? They were quite ambitious at the time. I think you finished second one season, beating Rangers to the second spot. What were your thoughts on the whole process there and how it kind of finished?
Yeah, when I was there, it was great. They invested a lot of money. We were bringing players on who had just won European Championship for Greece, internationalists, players from all over the world. It was a really good time to be involved at Hearts. It was exciting football, front foot football. Again, when that happened, I was just coming through the system. At that time, I was just on the bench really most games, and I would play a handful. But the club was flying. We obviously finished second that year, won the Scottish Cup, qualified for Europe, and it was the year after we finished second that I started to play, I think, 35 games. It was a great time. Obviously, when I left, things kind of went downhill, and if you speak to fans now, it was a nightmare. It was one of the worst periods of the club's history, and I'm so close to really properly going bust and out of business, but obviously they got saved. But then sometimes when you look back in hindsight, those moments, those highs, they may never be relived again, and you enjoyed it while it happened. But when you do look at it now, it's hard to say this maybe was a good thing, because now the club's bigger and stronger and better than it has ever been. It's fan-owned, got really good backers in the club from the outside, new stadium basically, new stand, the club's just going strength to strength. So maybe if that didn't happen, would the club be here where it is now? I don't know. However, There was really good times, but there was also dark times as well. But I'm sure most clubs could say that at some point in their careers. But that was, again, I wasn't here. I was down in England when this was all happening, and I think it was really close to the brink. But again, some good people came in and saved the club, and they had a process, and it's just got stronger and stronger.
I suppose it's one example of many similar situations. We think of maybe Portsmouth, we think of Leeds previously. I think the element of playing with fire is something that it's a massive gamble, isn't it? You're rolling the dice in terms of throwing money at it, and then the risk is potentially, if it doesn't fulfil wisely, then there's a backlash to it,
Yeah, I think especially football clubs, it's a great business venture. I'm not sure unless you're in the top elite level, but in Scottish football and other English league football as well, it's difficult. It's really difficult to get a turnover. But a lot of these people do it for the passion because they love it. They love the sport. They love the competitiveness and that notion of competing for 3 points at the weekend. And it'll always be here. And I think that's why we eat, sleep, and breathe football.
What was it like being a Scottish Cup winner in 2006?
Great. Again, I was really... Actually, I think, did I play the semi-final? I'm not sure if I played the semi-final, but I was actually really disappointed. And I played the cup final and started the game. It was, for some reason, I don't know. I never played the semi, but I just had a funny feeling I may have an opportunity, but I didn't. I was disappointed. However, the team out went out and performed. And obviously, when you look back, it was a toss of a coin because it went to a penalty shootout against Gretna. And if we didn't win that, it would have been a massive, massive upset. But we did. And just always remember the scenes coming back in the bus after the game, going through Gorgie. All the fans were there, obviously having the after party the next morning, going up into town and having the bus parade along Princess Street, which is obviously the biggest in front of the castle, to Gorgie with hundreds of thousands of fans. That I think, unless as a manager somewhere, I've never realised that moment ever again.
I suppose being a local lad, it means more to you as well in terms of what we said previously around that emotional attachment.
Yeah, definitely. I think even now when you're walking the streets, you always get recognised and people know who you are. And I'm quite, I like to keep my head down. I wouldn't say I like the attention, but my wife's always like, oh, you done had a good career there, and I did. I need to think like that as well and hold my head high. And I done a lot of good things for Hearts and ultimately made them money as well in a roundabout way or to their transfer. So, but they played a massive part of my career.
Talk to me about that transfer then. So obviously the transition from Scotland to England, playing for Wolverhampton Wanderers. How did that come about? You mentioned obviously previously around the incentive of giving you leadership roles and putting a price tag on you in that sense. How did that all come about in the summer there?
Yeah, it had been. I think Wolves had made a couple of bids prior to that. I don't know if in the different windows, and there'd been interest from other clubs from abroad. But basically, I think I got a call on Friday from my agent saying they'd accepted a bid. I think we were supposed to be playing Hamilton away the next day. Obviously, I flew down to Wolverhampton on the Birmingham on the Saturday, and obviously travelled to Wolves, which is like 30 minutes away. Went and watched their game, done my medical straight after the game, and then trained the next morning on Sunday morning. And I think it had been snowing as well. It was quite wintry condition. It was 31st of January, it was my birthday, when I moved down. And actually that first week, I ended up being ill. I had a sickness bug. I don't know where I caught it. But also even training on Sunday, I just felt like, I think the manager said, "Oh, you okay?" Because I think you actually don't realise when you travel down, and it's a massive deal. It's your first moment in your career. You're moving as well. Yeah. A lot going on. Probably lack of sleep as well. Just making sure you get that contract signed. You're travelling down. It's a long day. You're doing medical. Have a sleep. Heads all over the place. Training the next day. You've not done anything for 2 or 3 days. So yeah, I found it tough. But I wasn't well that week. Then my first game was the following week against Coventry away. We lost 2-1, and I actually should have scored in that game. But that was a really eye-opener to what the challenges which lay ahead.
Was that under Mick McCarthy, Terry Connor?
Yes, it was. Yeah. They bought. Yeah, they were honest as a day, as long as you'd say about Mick McCarthy. Great manager, great guy. Obviously, seen a lot of me because I ended up going to Ipswich with him as well. And Terry as well. Terry's a really good coach, obviously. Terry and Mick have always been together and they complement each other so well. But I think Mick's a nice guy, but you don't want to get his wrong side, and he demanded a lot if he is a defender. You'd just be praying you go to that game not losing any headers, or you definitely pick up on it.
It's funny actually, because a couple of months back I interviewed Matt Jarvis and he said the exact same thing in terms of you just don't want to get the wrong side of Mick McCarthy. One thing I just want to add to that, Christophe, is obviously playing in the Scottish League and then coming into the Championship. Is there any notable differences there? Is there anything that you had to do to maybe adapt your game and kind of consider the role of you as a centre-back and how maybe that position has changed as the adaptation of technically and tactically management implies certain things there? What were your thoughts on you coming into that position and how it was different from maybe Hearts and that experience?
Yeah, honestly, it was a real eye-opener. And I've said this to many people. My first game, I was playing against two big, strong, athletic guys. One of them was Liam Best, and I can't who else was playing against. But I was like, wow, I need to get stronger here. I need to get bigger, because it was tough. It was tough. The players down there, they're man mountains, athletic, strong, technically good as well, and it was a real eye-opener. I need to be stronger, be quicker. I was always quick, it was one of those biggest traits, quick, but just that physicality down there. Scotland's got a lot of great things going for it. Obviously, Celtic Rangers are the top team who have got really international stars, technically good, and the lower teams though have a bit of technical, have a bit of physicality, but until you're down there, I don't think you realise everyone down there is an athlete. Everyone down there is strong and fit, who can run, can head the ball, can tackle, can pass it. And you're playing, 23 different teams every season. Different styles. Some will play, some will go back to the front. Some will counter-attack, all the different styles. We're in Scotland, and Scotland is a great league. But you're playing every team 3 times, basically. And so you're not having that variety and that challenge of playing these teams. So it was a big eye-opener.
And on that then, so was there any kind of toughest opponents you ever played against? Obviously, in team-wise, but was there anyone player-wise that you thought, oh, geez, like that was a real eye-opener for me in terms of development?
Obviously, when I played the Premier League, you're playing against world-class stars, but sometimes against the top teams. A lot of times as a defender, the ball's in front of you, so you're not physically getting tested, it's just your concentration levels and those moments where players will just do a 1-2 and lose you, or the great movement, a step forward to go back, and you might get lost. But again, I've always said it to defenders. I think it's the hardest games for defenders, the ones that when we used to play Burnley and that, it'd be a channel ball in behind you. You've got, I don't know, Danny Ings, someone like that, running in the channel, chasing you down, nudging you constantly. And they're the hardest games, because you just can't switch off. You're physically getting tested to your maximum, aerially and on the ground, and you're just running, and you're challenging for headers, you're covering, you're going in the channel, clearing up bouncing balls. And for me, and I'm sure most defenders, those are the hardest games. Yes, you play against the Man United, Chelsea's and Liverpool's and so on. Yeah, they'll play a lot. They'll play behind you now and then, but they'll have the majority of the ball. It's just concentration levels, and they just got those moments with technically gifted players who can deliver a ball, or who have got a great touch, who can swivel and just check and they put the ball in the areas that you're going to score. But for a defender, definitely it's the more back to front games, but it's just end to end. Those were the toughest.
In terms of maybe concentration and that mental strain as a player, can that be taught, Christophe, or does that come instinctively? I'm just interested on that concept, because if it's something that is needed to make that elite level and that big step, can you develop that skill? I'm just interested if that is possible.
You probably have to speak to a scientist, but I think there's methods that you can improve that, because ultimately, if you especially defenders, you can't concentrate and you've got poor concentration, then very much doubt you're going to make it at a top level, because you're going to be relying down your teammates on a regular basis. So I think there'll be training methods to increase your concentration level, and how you're focused for the whole game and not just 60 minutes, how you can reset yourself again. So definitely, yeah, there is, that'll be common, because it is hard to concentrate, and most likely goals are conceded through really good player just lacks the concentration.
That season you got promoted with Wolves. What do you think was the success of that? You mentioned the management, you mentioned the culture there, and obviously the adaptation from coming down from Edinburgh to the Midlands. What do you think was the successful element there that enabled Wolves to get promoted into the Premier League?
So I obviously joined in January, so they were top of the league, I think, at the time. And I played the last 16 games of the season. I think the first 2 or 3 we didn't win, but then we got on a run, and I always remember that it wasn't mathematically we sealed it, but it was the Easter weekend. This was another test of a player moving from Scotland to England. I think the Easter weekend, obviously it's quite notorious in England. I think we played on the Friday and Sunday, or the Saturday and Monday. And then the second game, it was my second 90 minutes in 2 days or 3 days. We played Derby away. It was roasting. We won 3-2, and I mind after the game saying, Mick McCarthy was like, God, the defence was terrible, because I was absolutely blowing. The whole defence was blowing, but that was a moment where we kind of just knew, like, we're getting promoted, we're going to win the league. But also another aspect from the jump from Scotland down to England, moments like that, you're going away in front of 30,000, second game in 3 days. It was tough. We got through it, but it was a tough game. But that was one of the, again, that moment that kind of the team knew. I don't know if it was mathematically we were getting promoted or we were going to win the league. We kind of knew that was it. We were definitely going up.
I remember that season, just for the fact that I'm a Birmingham fan, and Birmingham were on your tails during that season. Then we finished second and got promoted with you under Alex McCarthy.
I think he did actually. Yeah, again, we were just back to your original question. Sorry, I think we were just a British-based squad who had good mentality. We good team spirit. We worked hard for each other, but we had that quality as well. Our wingers were good. We obviously had strikers who were scoring goals at that level, and we would have been a hard team to play against.
So obviously, that initial change going into the Premier League, where you're probably in a Championship where you've got momentum, you're winning, and then all of a sudden you're fighting relegation, you're up against different opponents. What's your mindset shift going into that, and obviously trying to stay in the league, and then real up against backs against the wall in terms of trying to win points. Every point matters. Concentration levels. What is your thought process going into those games, and is it challenging from a mental perspective to keep to that level? I'm just interested on that as a player.
I think obviously our first season, it's all brand new, it's exciting, everyone's loving going to these stadiums playing against these players, but most of the defender, it's tough. I look back at the results, there were games we got beat 3-4-0, but there was moments when I think apart from Arsenal, we beat every top team. We beat Chelsea, we beat Man United, we beat Liverpool, we beat Man City, we beat Tottenham. So we took points off the big teams, but there was moments in games where you get beat 2-3-4-0 off the top teams as well, and it's tough. However, I think there are realism where we are as a club. We're on probably the smallest budget in the league. We're new to it. So I think it was kind of managing the group, not to get too down. Yes, obviously, we don't do things right. The manager will tell us, or Terry will tell us, and we need to improve. But there are realism and the level of quality, and we were never going to go in and play a team tactically. It was more about working hard to score goals, be aggressive, and win your duels.
How did you find that in terms of when Mick McCarthy got sacked? I think Terry kind of took the role, didn't he, as an interim towards the end. Were you there during that period, and how was that for you?
Yeah, it was tough. Obviously, you don't like seeing anyone getting sacked. Unfortunately, our results hadn't been great for a while. And I wouldn't say I don't think that it's the owner or the chairman that sacks the manager, it's the fans, and I think the fans obviously start to show their frustration and their disappointment and their anger, and ultimately they made a decision to get rid of Mick and bring Terry. So yeah, it was a transitional period. We were on a downward spiral. Our third season, we were struggling. And again, and especially in that league, it's unforgiving. Very unforgiving against the the players you're playing against and the teams you're playing against.
And then obviously relegation. How was that emotionally for you? Obviously coming into Wolves and seeing the highs and then obviously seeing the lows.
Again, obviously no one wants that in your CV. However, part and parcel of football, and there's very few. When you're a smaller club and you're moving up a division to a really ruthless division, and we didn't have the biggest financial budget in the backing and transfer to that. Yeah, it's disappointing, but it's also it makes you stronger as well, more resilient, and the ups and downs. But football moves so fast. At the moment, it's disappointing, but the next season it's a new season, and you move on and you prepare for that. And again, football just goes day to day, match to match, season to season, really. And it's about living in that moment, enjoying it when it happens, but also when it's not going so well, you're disappointed, but you reflect at the same time and don't get too down.
You mentioned obviously Mick moved to Ipswich and then you followed him later. One thing I was interested in is you've gone from Edinburgh to the Midlands to Ipswich. How was that in terms of relocating? You mentioned your family and everything surrounding your personal life earlier in the podcast, but how is that for you going from location to location? Because we see the glamorous perspective of football transfers and this contract and this amount of money, but obviously it takes its toll in terms of having to relocate. I'm just interested on that as a player.
Yeah, from Edinburgh, I think it was like a 6.5, 7 hour drive. I don't want to do it at the start of the season, for pre-season or the end of the season. Lucky enough, Ipswich was only an hour from Stansted, and there was always direct flights to come back to Edinburgh if I wanted to. But I think it's also important where you go. In Ipswich was a great town, great club, great fan base, and one of my most memorable periods as a player. There was a really connection with the fans and the team spirit there as well. And it was, I always say, it's probably one of the best changing rooms, if not, probably is the best changing room I was part of. There's not many places around Ipswich. You can maybe go 45 minutes to Norwich, or an hour and 10 in the train to London. So everyone stayed in Ipswich, and it was a great little period in my football life. I loved playing there. I actually went there, I think it was 2 weeks before the start of the season. Obviously Mick had contacted to take me. I decided to go there, and then I went in my first. I think I had a 2-year contract initially because I would like to see how I was, but I went there my first year, won player of the season, advanced player of the season, and ended up signing a 4-year deal. So I went there, backed myself, worked hard, and believed in my talent, because the previous season I hadn't played for the last 3 months. So I hadn't played football for a long period, and obviously lost my place in the Scotland squad as well, which is disappointing. And sometimes, unless you're an elite player, people think, being out of contract is great, but it's not as easy as you think. There's a lot of good players now who are out of contract and can't find a club because money gets taken up and the budget's not as big as people think, and usually defenders are not at the top of that list.
So how to trust people during that process as well? Because you mentioned budgets and kind of the incentive when you're out of contract. I feel like, again, speaking to other players that have been out of contract, there's a sense of, do I trust this individual, or do I proceed with it? Yeah. Do I rush it? I'm just interested in that. I
think I've always been one who likes to get things sorted early doors, and I had a couple of offers prior to that. I didn't go through with it. And obviously you have an agent at a time, and you know what agents are like. They're not honest. However, they're only feeding back what clubs are saying, and some clubs are waiting until someone goes out the door, or they're just waiting to see what happens. And time's going on, and pre-season's a massive part of your preparation for the season. And again, I went there. My first game, it was a friendly. I was so far off that I was like, wow. But then my second game, I got better, and I think I sat on the bench for the first couple of games. I had to wait for my moment to get back in the team. And actually, it was my first game was away to Birmingham, and I scored, which I have scored. Birmingham was a happy place, hunting grounds from the outside. I think I scored 3 goals in 2 outings.
I was probably in the crowd as a young kid. Yeah, Christophe.
Okay.
Just on your initial move to Ipswich, was the thought always to go back to Scotland? You mentioned the element of Stansted Airport. Was it always in your head to go back at some point?
No, it was people. I'm very fortunate. I don't know if you've been to Edinburgh, but Edinburgh's a brilliant city, a really good city, and you actually don't realise how good it is until you leave. And that's no disrespect to anywhere, but it's got everything you want. It's walkable, it's just got everything. Obviously, I was born and bred here, and I've got a lot of friends and family here as well, and that's just I think most people, if you ask most sportsmen, they'll always tend to go back home at some point. Yes, there'll be some who stay wherever. However, because Edinburgh was such a great city, and I was always going to come back at some point. Yeah.
What was the difference to maybe the first spell at Hearts in comparison to your time later on in your career? Obviously, there's going to be a significant change because we mentioned the element of ownership and how maybe the league's formatted, etc. But I'm just interested on maybe you going back into that. Obviously, your expectations, your standards. And the reason I say that is there's been previous examples of past players that have gone back to previous clubs and it's either worked out really well or hasn't worked out. Ronaldo is a prime example of that at Man United. But I'm just interested on you moving to Hearts and what you previously thought it was to what it was now.
Yeah, it's quite funny. I actually could have moved a year earlier if I wanted to. The offer was there, but I wanted to stay at Ipswich. But then I went to Hearts. I went back, more experienced player, international player who played in the Premier League. Went back as captain, and it was a really enjoyable spell. On the playing side of things, the team was underachieving. To be honest, we were going through a transitional period. We're getting a stadium built. There was a lot of stuff going off the pitch. Our squad, compared to the squad now, it will be totally different. The finances are totally different. But it was, I'm sure if the club looked back, it was a really important period of their rebuild as well. And I loved it. First year back, got Player of the Year. I think fans Player of the Year as well. So yeah, I contributed to that, and it was great to be back.
How did you find the derby against Hibernian? What your thoughts going into that game?
Yeah, I love it. Like any derby, but yeah, I had derbies at Wolves against West Brom and Ipswich and Norwich. However, being a local boy, you know what lies in it. Love playing against it. Obviously at Tynecastle, the atmosphere, the pitches, the stadium is really tight to the pitch. And then when you go to the road, another good stadium, but you're getting abuse for the fans and that, and it's something that you relish. And, I'd always love just being on that bus, going down Easter Road, which is a tight street, a big street that leads down to the stadium with Hibs and fans just giving you abuse as you're going down in preparation for the match and that. And I think, those moments, I loved it. I cherished it, and it's what gave you those butterflies in your belly to go and play and perform. And the reason why I'd like to think most players play football for those moments.
I get the sense that you thrive under pressure. Then, so even some of the things that you said previously in terms of that anxiety, etc. Do you feel like that is something that enables you to perform effectively? Yeah,
I think so. I think every game I'd go into, I put pressure on myself. I know there's outside pressure. But I was my biggest critic. I always put my pressure on to perform, to win my headers, win my tackles, not make a mistake, make sure my passes was good, all that kind of stuff. But first and foremost, be a defender. And those moments, even when, again, I was my biggest critic. I'll come after games and might have won the game, but I didn't play that well today. And I'll probably, stupid enough, and thinking I might not be starting next week. That was my mind frame throughout most of my career. It's probably sad at times, but it's not. I think it's that mentality as a defender as well. You can't be, and there was something that works for others. Like you see the more attacker playing a bit relaxed, I'm laughing at a joke, but no, I was more serious. Like I've got a job to do, because ultimately a striker can have a stinker for 89 minutes, then score a goal in the 90th, and he's a hero. But a defender could be unbelievable for 89 minutes and concede a goal or lose a marker in the box, and you're making the headlines. So yeah, that was my mind frame and mindset.
We could talk about your career for forever and ever, but I just want to bring you to maybe your coaching and how that become apparent. Can you give some insight on how that transition from a player to a coach has come about and what you've learned from that experience so far?
Yeah, my coaching career started when I came back to Hearts. I helped at the academy, the under 14s and 16s. I used to go 2 or 3 times a week, and obviously if I could make a match day on the weekend I would. really enjoyed it. But then I obviously left Hearts, went to Raith Rovers as a player. By the time I was a player, John McGlynn and Paul Swift, who was assistant there, allowed me to take some sessions. Then they actually moved on, and Ian Murray came in, and I was announced as player coach. But I only stayed for another couple of months. I decided to retire. And from then, I kind of I took a break. Initially, I said I'm going to take a 6 months to a year off. However, after about 2 weeks in my head, it was like, I need to get back to work. And there was a couple of things in the pipeline that kind of fell through. And obviously, I went January time. Livingston were looking for a coach who were in the Premier League. I joined them till the end of the season. Enjoyed my time there. However, due to financial restrictions, they had to let people go, and I was let go. Again, obviously looking for a job. I would go to Falkirk, who John McGlynn was, and help out there. He really opened the door. He allowed me to take sessions. I was on the bench on match days as well, helping with warm up, all that kind of stuff, video analysis, etc., while also helping out the Scottish performance schools, SFA performance schools, which is at secondary schools from first to fourth year, where about 6 to 8 players of high prospect players train there on their certain periods throughout the day. I'd help out there now and then with Keith Wright, who was really open, allowed me to come in, and I really enjoyed that. Then obviously I got the opportunity to, I think I was in my pro license, just started my pro license, which I'm still on. And then I had the opportunity to join Scotland 21s, which was unbelievable. I think I was involved for 5 games for the European qualifiers before I had to leave. We played Spain, we got beat off Spain 1-0, like 85th minute, and they scored, but we were playing away in Spain, and there was like 8,000 fans there. It was unbelievable. And we beat Belgium, we beat Hungary and drew with Hungary, and we beat I think it was Malta. So the guys were I think they were second place in the group, and they're really in a strong place just now. And I was also, because that was only like on a camp-to-camp basis, it wasn't your full-time job, and I was really craving to have a full-time job, and the opportunity arose in America at the MLS Next Pro, and I decided to, I had a couple of interviews and got off that job, and I went there for 6 months before I returned. Obviously we were expecting a baby, and we had to make a decision what was best for our family, and at that moment in time, it was to come home. But that experience in America, different culture, was unbelievable. And I initially went over there as assistant manager. However, the man lost his job, and I was an interim head coach for the last, I think, 3 or 4 months before that I handed my notice. But again, unbelievable experience, developed as a coach and as a person, and I can't, it's only going to hold me a good stead going forward.
Did you feel like maybe you were thrown in the deep end with that interim job at Hutsfield? I'm just interested.
Obviously, I didn't expect it to happen. Obviously, you never expect a man to lose his job. He did. In the first couple of days, obviously I got told, obviously you're going to be until the end of the season, and we'll see what goes from there. The first couple of days, my head was like fried, because you're trying to work out what you're going to do for training, how you're going to set up your training week, what your processes are. There's a game at the weekend. Because at that level, it's basically Nashville's, it was Nashville Soccer Club's development team, B team, but we were in a different state. We were quite unique to a lot of other MLS Next Pro teams who usually train at their, like, at Inter Miami will probably train at Inter Miami's facility. Sorry, Inter Miami 2 will train at Inter Miami's facility, like most of the teams. But we were in a different state. We had our own stadium, we had our own little wee training ground. We would have 3,000 or 4,000 fans at home games. So at that level, that's unbelievable. There's a lot of clubs in Scotland and England when they get those fans, Yeah. So that was a real learning experience. But I honestly, like, we were, our squad varied from 18 to 24 players, depending on injuries. We had 7 or 8 full-time staff members, so that responsibility to lead and guide those players and staff was great. And I learned a lot of that experience. I'm happy with a lot of stuff we've done. However, I'm a coach, and I will make mistakes, and you reflect on those mistakes like anyone does. It doesn't matter if you're been coaching for 1 year or 20 years, you always make things and reflect, okay, I've done this differently, and I'm no different. So it was a great learning experience.
How do you adapt to different types of personalities then, Christophe? Because you mentioned throughout the podcast that you were quite serious in your approach and you were very, no grey areas. You've got to get a job done in terms of your defensive performance. But you might come across different types of personalities when playing, as well as coaching. And you mentioned the different generations as well, in terms of how you get the best out of them. But what things were you kind of incorporating to develop yourself to be open to different types of personalities, different types of individuals to get the best performance?
To be honest, I can be serious, but I'm quite like with the, especially younger ones, I quite have a laugh and joke with them as well. I give them a bit of banter and stuff and guide them, I think there was a couple of players there, and actually centre half who really took under my wing a little bit, I would say, and I enjoyed my time helping them individually and giving pass on experience, but also there was attackers and midfielders that always pass it on, and I've always had an open door. I always will be. I'm always approachable, but I'll be honest as well. But I think that's the best way. I think one thing I said just there, I'm honest. What I say to your face, I would say to the group as well. Obviously there's a line. You don't get personal and stuff like that. But if people are not doing their jobs or their expectations, you need to tell them. I'm not, it doesn't mean give them a bollocking or that, but you got to know. I think one thing I've learned through my experience as a player in my 20 years is honesty is the best policy. I know it sounds so simple and everyone's heard that saying before, but honestly it is. And at the time you might not like it, a day later you might accept it, okay, he's right, or it might be a week later, a month later, 6 months later. But that is just the only way for me, because I've worked under managers who say one thing to your face and do another thing, and yeah, it's kind of, can you trust that person or you lose respect for them? And that will spread into the change room as well. So that's one thing I'll always say. There's no, I'll be honest with you, and it might be a hard conversation at times. However, at least we both know where we stand and our expectations, and there's no falling out.
So final segment then, Christophe. What are the next steps for you then? You mentioned obviously you got a newborn child on its way, but what are your next steps in terms of maybe your career pathway within football? Is it coaching is something that you want to continue doing? I'm just interested on what your thought process is there.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously coming to Scotland, there's not as many opportunities due to finances, but I always knew that coming back. Yeah. But again, I've never been one. There will be certain individuals, so this is going to be my pathway. But I think sport and football in general, you can't dictate what your next steps are going to be. Opportunities arise, you have to have a discussion about it and what's the best thing to do. And the best thing to do is to be coaching and working on learning, coaching players and helping those players develop and teams develop, but also developing as a coach yourself. You're just like a player, that you're always learning, always experiencing things, and it's only way you get better, and I'm no different. So yeah, I'm always open to, yes, I have aspirations to be a manager again at one point, be that tomorrow or be that 6 years down the line. That's football. There's no right or wrong way. Doesn't mean you're going to be a success or not going to be a success. But it's what you do within those moments that you're always learning and adapting, making yourself better. That's only ultimately going to make individuals better, teams better. So very open to anything, be it in the first team level or academy level, as long as you're in an environment where you're learning, you're supported, and it's aligned, and everything's aligned together. And I think if everything's aligned in your work, where you work, things are so much easier. Everyone's on the same page length. But again, I say an open environment. Everyone's worth there for a reason. You need to use them. If you're not getting frustrated because your input's not appreciated or you're not getting to do anything. I think it's vital that people get to do things and allow to express themselves and show their talent. So again, yeah, very open-minded to what the future holds, and we'll see what the next days and weeks and months ahead happen, and we'll just go from there.
Absolutely, and maybe in those 6 years' time that you might be able to become on this podcast again and have a different story to tell me in terms of what you're doing. And I just want to wish you all the best with that, Christophe. I just want to say thank you for your time today. I love your honesty. I love your openness towards what what you've done in terms of your career pathway, and also how that's maybe transformed your thinking going into obviously your coaching pathway. And obviously from a Birmingham fan, finding out that you scored many a times against us was not ideal, but it just shows the character and the leadership and the approach that you had to the game. So again, I just want to say thank you and good luck in the future in Scotland as well as elsewhere.
No, thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure.